All right, it's Thursday. Alex, Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. Evan, Sidery, Locked on Colts. Two teams going in kind of different directions this late in the season, matching up on Christmas night. I'm sure Bo, Evan, and myself very happy about that. Doing the podcast right after. We're going to get into our crossover edition here. This can be a fun one. It's gonna be a fun one. We don't get to talk to Evan a lot when it comes to the Colts. They are one of the scarier teams in Bo, in my estimation, that the Cardinals have to face the rest of the season. If you haven't been a part of one of our crossovers, how we do this is first segment, we'll kind of do a how did we get here segment. Both Evan and Bo and myself will kind of do it from our own sides. Second segment, Evan is going to ask us all the questions necessary to get you ready from a Cardinals perspective as Colts fans. And then final segment, we'll wrap up where Bo and I will flip the script and do it for Evan, and we'll get everything we need to know about that. I mean, fringe MVP candidate Jonathan Taylor, the bane of all Cardinals fans' existence going into Saturday night. What do we have? 72 more hours until the reckoning of what could be Jonathan Taylor and this rush defense. So, Evan, let's start with you. It's been a weird season. It's been a double sprained ankle in the same game season. It's been a Carson Wentz has kind of come back to earth and shown people what he used to be like in Philly, even though his role is a little bit different with the run heavy offense in Indy, and the defense Darius Leonard led is the Darius Leonard led defense. Have you gone into the spin cycle 15 times this year? Like, you've seen so many different versions of this team. Where are they now, and can they sustain it through the playoffs?
Yeah, I think this version we're seeing now is what is the sustainable version. I do believe this team is legitimately one of the more scarier teams in the AFC for the playoffs this year. I could easily see them winning a game or two and go to the AFC title game this year. You see the way Jonathan Taylor is running the ball. And for those wondering out here, I actually live in Arizona and cover the Phoenix Suns as well. So just listening to local sports radio out here, everyone is terrified of what Jonathan Taylor's going to be able to do here on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Taylor could do in that sense. But also, I think Frank Reich, his playbook's completely open now. Carson Wentz is his quarterback. He has a strong arm, mobile quarterback for the first time since 2018, which is Andrew Luck. Carson Wentz is in no way close to Andrew Luck, but he at least opens up the playbook to give up those same plays that they can do. So that allows them to do a lot of play action, a lot of rollouts, letting people get sucked into the box and then throw it deep, like Ashton Dulin or Michael Pittman Jr., Paris Campbell if he comes back this Saturday. If not, even a lot of other weapons as well, like a tight end as well. But you also see this opportunistic defense, 31 turnovers in 14 games, tied for the league lead in the NFL. Their goal was 40 coming into the season. They're on pace for 39, so they're right on track for that. But outside of that 0-3 start, Carson Wentz had no training camp due to his foot injury, and he also had, I believe, a week due to COVID issues. So outside of that, he had to get all that chemistry going during training camp. There was no OTAs. The Colts were one of the lightest teams in the NFL when it came to that. So it's a very slow adjustment period for Carson Wentz from that sense. But then after those 3 weeks and that sprained ankle, like you mentioned, Alex, both sprained ankles for Carson Wentz in the first 3 weeks, the Colts have had 11 straight games where they've led a game by 10 plus points. They have been absolutely dominant from that sense. And they've blown 3 games, and they're against the Titans, the Buccaneers, and the Ravens. And if they didn't do that, they'd have 11 straight wins at this point. They're just rattling off teams, blowing them out left and right. Their average margin of victory over the stretch is 14 points. So they were just absolutely going in, taking the lead, and not letting up at any point. I think Frank Reich has realized over the last 6 weeks, though, that Jonathan Taylor is very special. He's literally, I think he's Adrian Peterson 2.0 as far as like the young version of AP that we saw in 2012. He's on pace right now for 24 touchdowns, 2,300 scrimmage yards, and I think 6.1 yards per touch this season, which is just absolutely incredible for a guy like Jonathan Taylor and his workload. But this team is Jonathan Taylor. It runs through him. I am absolutely terrified, though, of Carson Wentz in the playoffs if that does get to that situation. I think Frank Reich's realized that as well, because we've seen over that stretch of games as well, Carson Wentz is throwing maybe 20 times per game. He's not putting the ball in Carson Wentz's hands much at all. So this team runs through Jonathan Taylor, and opportunistic defense is still young, getting better. But if the Cardinals somehow can stop the run a little bit, I do believe, honestly, this could be a chance for the Cardinals to maybe have Carson Wentz try to beat them, and that's not really happened much at all in a single game this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the last game, he completes 5 passes, but they're still able to put up points on the legs of Jonathan Taylor. But it's like if you were to ask Arizona Cardinals fans, this would be a tough answer for me. If you were to ask the Arizona Cardinals fans if they would endure the start that the Indianapolis Colts had. What was it, 1-5 at one point, Evan? I mean, it was just it was
Yes.
frustration. I mean, And the Arizona Cardinals are complete polar opposite. I mean, they come out of the gates hot. They're 10-2 at one point, but when you talk about when it really matters the most, the Colts are trending in the right direction. The Arizona Cardinals are going the opposite way right now. Despite all the success and all the fun it was coming out of the gates, I think everybody would make the tough decision to trade spots with them because right now is the most important time. How were they able to do that? Was it just kind of figuring it out, getting the new quarterback incorporated, figuring out that Jonathan Taylor is the face of this franchise, and they just needed to ride that out, or was it more to that? It wasn't as simple?
I think honestly it is that simple. Just because I think the Colts, I think this, I don't know if it was by design or if it was just them not realizing it so early on in the season. But Jonathan Taylor in the first 5 weeks of the season only got 50% of the carries or 50% of the snaps for the running backs. It was usually really a 50-50 split between Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack was sprinkling a little bit there, but he's been a DNP the last 2 months of the season outside of that. But really the last 10 or so weeks, Jonathan Taylor's got about 75% of the snaps for running back. He's taking over as a 3-down running back. He's running the whole show. Carson Wentz can sprinkle in and make some deep plays happen with his arm strength and maybe run a little bit. But outside of that, it's mostly just been, I think, the Colts realizing this guy we have is a freak in the backfield. He's LaDainian Tomlinson. He's Adrian Peterson. He's just a freak. Cardinals fans, when you watch him on Saturday, it's going to be a treat just because you're seeing like I think a generational running back, but it's also a treat for the Colts fans for a second because I think I'm seeing the Cardinals. I want to hit on Arizona for a second too because what is going on with them? Because Jonathan Taylor has to be licking his chops with what he saw some guy named Craig Reynolds run for 112 yards for the Lions on Saturday. Jonathan Taylor might be going for 200 plus on Saturday if that continues. I mean, what's your guys' thoughts on this? Because it feels like watching him up close, living like I mentioned, living out here in Arizona, I watch every Cardinals game myself, and the last couple of years it's been the same story. Arizona gets hot, they go down in November, December, and it just goes downhill. So, like, what is the trend with that? It looks like it's continuing again this year, and you play Dallas the week after this, so it could be rough sledding once again.
Yeah, the Cardinals are now tied for the division lead with the tiebreaker, obviously, I believe, over the Rams currently. It's been a tale of, 2 seasons. One is the first half, and the second part is the other. And Bo and I have gone back and forth about Cliff Kingsbury's ability to lead. The Cardinals also have a freak on their team in Kyler Murray. He just hasn't been playing up to the level that we saw before his ankle injury on the last play of the game against Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. Where the ball hit AJ Green in the back and fell harmlessly to the ground, which kind of started this whole thing.
You wish it fell into the hands of the Green Bay Packers defense.
When the ball hit AJ Green in the back?
Yeah.
Against Green Bay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Obviously, when AJ Green didn't turn around. Regardless. We don't have to bring up old stuff. Right. Jonathan Taylor obviously is going to be something that the Cardinals are going to have to game for, put 8 in the box. I mean, it's not going to be, as you mentioned, it's not going to be a secret as to how they're going to try and stop him. When it comes to Kyler Murray and this defense, I feel like the Cardinals aren't dead men walking, which people are kind of riding them out to pasture already. And I've been very critical of Cliff after their loss to Detroit. But all in all, what we're looking at with the Cardinals organization and the Cardinals roster currently is there's a lot of question marks like there were going to the regular season. They're just different ones now. And with DeAndre Hopkins on the shelf, hopefully Ronnie Hudson will be back to shore up the offensive line come Saturday in a short week after being in COVID protocols last week. There's just a lot of question marks as to who the Cardinals can trust on both sides of the ball now to make plays. And we're going to find out a lot on Saturday night, Christmas night at State Farm Stadium. Coming up next, Evan Sidery is going to go more in depth at Sidery on Twitter is his personal ad Locked On Colts for all the greatest Colts information. He's one of the best, if not the best, on the Locked On NFL portion of the Locked On Podcast Network from a social perspective. He's going to, firing squad us and kind of get more in depth about what he needs to know about the Cardinals ahead of Saturday night's matchup. First, Stat Hero. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Winning feels so much better, but traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. Stat Hero just flips the script completely. They're the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. And the crazy part, Stat Hero shows you their lineup before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. This never-before-seen innovation of a fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid has Stat Hero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for 100% match. Once again, say it with me now. stathero.com/lockedon. Promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply.
We are back for segment 2 of our crossover special. I'm Evan Sidery, the host of Locked On Colts. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack of Locked On Cardinals. I listen to these guys every day. You guys make sure you do that as well. They do such great stuff covering the Arizona Cardinals. But let's dive into it. I have a lot of questions as a local Arizona resident about this Cardinals team because, man, like we were just talking about a couple minutes ago, there's just a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing with the Cardinals right now. But I want to hit on the main positive of this season, even though he's been out for about, I believe it was 3 or 4 games with that ankle injury. But Kyler Murray, when he's been playing, he's been awesome to watch. I mean, he's always been one of the most entertaining quarterbacks in the NFL from a watch perspective because he could just run all over the field, make throws with his cannon arm. But what's been your guys' assessment of Kyler Murray this year, just from my overall perspective? I know it's going down a different trend for the last couple weeks again with his inconsistent play, but overall this season, what's been your guys' thoughts on Kyler?
Go ahead, Bo.
I mean, he was playing at MVP caliber level at the beginning of the season, probably the first before he bowed out with the injury that he sustained on Thursday Night Football against the Packers. And that was kind of a signature drive that he was leading until the miscommunication at the end. I mean, that could have been his moment, and it turned into an absolute dud. It was the Arizona Cardinals suffering that loss. And a lot of people saying, see, we told you about this Cardinals team. We told you about Kyler Murray. He can't be the face of a franchise. And then the next thing, you got this cloud of the unknown. Like, when's he coming back? Because the way the Cardinals played it, he was day to day. He was game time decision. He ended up missing 3 weeks, 4 weeks with the bye week. Ended up going 38 days without playing a down of football. So then he comes back against the Chicago Bears and is able to knock the rust off relatively easy. Kind of a rough first snap, and then this offense ends up putting up 33 points, aided by was it 3 picks by Andy Dalton in that contest. Arizona Cardinals, their defense being opportunistic set up Kyler Murray for success. He was playing on a lot of short fields. He was lethal in the red zone. And since coming back, here's a team that's only cashed in twice in their last 8 red zone attempts. And Kyler Murray's thrown 3 brutal picks since he's returned as well. And you got to wonder where his focus is. Is he struggling as far as, is he coming in prepared? Is he still trying to knock the rust off? And it's a completely different quarterback, but it's also very similar to how he struggled down the stretch of last season. And, a guy that played 1 full season at the college football level, albeit a Heisman, trophy winning season that got him the number one, to be the number 1 pick in the NFL. How is his endurance? Is he somebody that can kind of keep up with the marathon that is now a 17-game season? That remains to be seen. So far, we haven't seen that. He's going to have to figure it out. He's got to have a bounce back game against this Colts defense that doesn't, match up well for the Arizona Cardinals offensive line because of how much interior pressure they give up, which blows up a lot of their plays. It's going to be a tough night for Kyler Murray. He's going to have to assert himself and show that he's a superstar caliber player. He hasn't been there the last 2 weeks. They need that because Cliff Kingsbury's even admitted this team goes as Kyler Murray goes. And that's just so important for the success of this squad.
And Alex, I wanted to ask you about this matchup too on Saturday with this Colts defense, because the way that GM Chris Bauer has built this defense, it's all about speed, it's all about length, all about athleticism. So this is probably the fastest defense the Cardinals are going to be going up against, and the longest one, because Darius Leonard, Bobby Okereke, they're the 2 longest linebackers in terms of arm length in the NFL. Super fast guys as well. How do you feel like Kyler matches up to that? Because this feels kind of like a defense where Kyler's kind of going to be bottled up in that pocket a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, it's going to come out of the offensive line. I mean, protect Kyler, protect the realm, protect everything. I mean, that's really what it's come down to. I mean, look at what happened in Detroit. No Rodney Hudson. You had backups on the full interior of the offensive line, even with Justin Pugh out. Like, this ain't working if you're not protecting Kyler Murray. Now, sure, his ability to I call it Steve Younging or Tony Romoing, where you do the reverse pivot outside of the pocket, which he's kind of grown accustomed to doing, and he's great throwing, going to the left or to the right in that motion once he gets out of the pocket. It seems like he's lost a little bit of that the edges are catching up to him a little bit more than they were. I don't know if his ankle is not fully healthy. I don't know what it is. It's not an excuse, but to answer that specifically, it's hard to do because we're seeing a different Kyler Murray than we saw the first handful of games this year where he was a world beater and nobody could stop him. What I do know is the ability for him to run has been completely cratered by opposing defenses. When you have long and fast defenses, sometimes you can leverage that to open up running lanes for a running back like Kyler Murray. Now, this is going to have to be a masterful game plan by Cliff Kingsbury on the offensive side of the ball, because Darius Leonard, what was he, South Carolina State or something? Like, Darius Leonard was the jewel of the 2018 draft, especially in the early second round. Like, he's always needs to be accounted for. He's probably the best LB in the league, even though he doesn't get the credit because he's an Indy for some reason. What we need to see from Kyler Murray is a game plan set for him that not only protects him in the pocket and gets the ball out fast, but also allows him to use his legs in a way that we haven't seen. I think he had 60 yards rushing. Bo, was that against Chicago? I don't know. He had some chunk games recently, but not what we saw during the first half of the season that really kept the linebackers and secondaries of opposing teams guessing.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. I want to flip to the other side as well, because this Colts offensive line over the last couple of months has been absolutely dominant, especially opening up these big holes for Jonathan Taylor. Bo, Alex, either one of you guys, how do you feel like this Cardinals defensive line, their front seven stacks against this Colts offensive line, and they're really good blocking tight ends as well? I feel like if those holes open, Jonathan Taylor's a freak athlete. We already hit on this. If there's a little crease, he's going to explode through that. And if he misses a tackle, he's gone for 75 yards for a touchdown. So how do you feel like they match up against him as well, as far as like the offensive line against his front seven, but also the pass rush too? Because Chandler Jones, quite honestly, has been a really big disappointment this year outside of week one. Obviously, J.J. Watt's out right now due to injury. Marcus Golden's having an okay season as well. I think short-term and long-term, the pass rush for Arizona is a little worrisome now too when you look into a longer lens.
Yeah, you know what? The team hasn't kind of changed since J.J. Watt went out, and Vance Joseph continues to run this scheme. And I read an interesting article about it from Oliver Conley, and it's basically schematically that's what they're going for is they're going to concede every once in a while, getting gashed by a big run, because they're going to go boom or bust, trying to create negative plays on early downs. Like, their pressure down is first down, and they're going to try to create those negative plays so they can set up success for the defense, later on. That worked out, for the first 8-9 games of the season. The last couple of weeks, it's been just complete disaster. As far as explosive runs, they've given up over 20 explosive runs, which is at like 17% clip, which is 31st in the league out of 32. So they're struggling. They're struggling mightily, and it's kind of going scheme over personnel, and it's just not working out. If for some reason, I mean, this is kind of the definition of insanity. How things have played out the last couple of weeks is trying the same thing, expecting different results. We'll see what happens with this. I mean, you have to get big plays from those two guys you just mentioned. Marcus Golden, the junkyard dog, was unbelievable the first couple of weeks of the season. He's kind of disappeared, but that's because, the offensive lines can key in on him. And then, of course, Chandler Jones, who's in a contract year. I mean, this guy's just costing himself millions upon millions of dollars each and every no-show of the week. They gotta show up on Christmas, and I don't know if that would be an early gift for Cardinals fans, because they need that. That's necessary. Now you don't have Robert Alford, who is quietly one of the most steady guys in your defensive secondary. He's on the IR, and you got to rely on a guy like Marco Wilson, a fourth-round pick, who's very talented. You know about his brother there in Indy, Quincy Wilson. This defensive secondary is very thin, and there's going to be some pressure. I don't care if it's Carson Wentz or Tom Brady. I mean, they're going to cut you up. An NFL caliber quarterback will cut you up if you're not getting any pressure. That's if, Jonathan Taylor isn't rushing like he's going for 250 yards in this game. But that's the scheme, and they're going to run. I mean, Vance Joseph has not varied from it at all, and they're just going to try to continue to create those negative plays. And they've been awful recently too on third down, getting off the field, something that was a strength early in the season. And now they're giving up third downs in the 40 percentile. It's not good. So it's going to come down to, can they just have a good game? Can they have a strong performance? And that's kind of just like close your eyes and wish.
I think Frank Reich's licking his chops with what you just said about his offensive game plan on Saturday, Bo. But the last one I had for you guys before we dive over to our final segment of the crossover, Alex, I want to hit on this, more of a long-term thought with you about this Cardinals team. This isn't a must-win, so to say, for this Colts team. They're on track to, if they lose to the Cardinals and they win out their last two games against the Raiders and Jaguars, this is very doable. They're going to be in the playoffs. The Cardinals are the same way. They're probably going to be in the playoffs anyways, but they're a team that's super reeling right now. You might be limping into the playoffs at this point. Does Saturday feel like a must-win to you guys in Arizona from their perspective, where you kind of need to realize if they can go out and beat this Colts team that's red hot, one of the best teams in the NFL the last 2 months, they can kind of give fans hope again. Like, okay, we can go on a deep playoff run.
It's interesting. I think it's a need to win. But the interesting part about this is why the NFL is such a fickle bee, because there's no way the Cardinals on paper should win this game on Saturday, showing the trajectories of both of these teams over the last month. And this is the week where the Cardinals come out and win by 2 touchdowns. And then it's like, wait, we again don't know anything about the NFL. It happens every week. Week 16 or week 15 was drunk. You have no idea what happens with all these teams. Having said that, the Cardinals need to go out and prove to themselves that they can still win that they can still win this year. After losing to Detroit, that is just a gut punch of all gut punches, where they weren't even in contention that game. They got abused on the road by a 1-win team with their backups, not named Jared Goff. Like that is mental warfare that's very difficult to overcome. If they can come home and play where they play terribly this year at home and win a game under the bright lights on Christmas against a team that nobody wants to play, that you could say, oh, the Colts made the Super Bowl. Oh yeah, I can see that, because the Colts can play in any weather. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Like, the Cardinals need to win this game for themselves. Sure, they'll make the playoffs, but if they can win this game, it will kind of reverse course on the last month of crapitude that we've seen from them.
Great stuff as always there from Bo and Alex here with Locked On Cardinals. Before we dive into our last Suburban crossover special, I wanted to tell you about our first sponsor of the end of this segment, and it is from, let me see here, On Location. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away, and On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information, or search Super Bowl On Location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location.
We're looking at the spread of this game on betonline.ag, and went from a 1-point Cardinal favorite to now a pick'em, which makes sense because of how hot the Colts are. BetOnline has you covered this holiday season for more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues to march its way towards the postseason. College bowls in full swing. You've got BetOnline remaining your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head over to the website, get on your cell phone, sign up today, receive a 50% welcome bonus. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, one word, and you'll get that welcome bonus. You put in $100, you get $50 free to help build your stack from hoops, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Take advantage of all the amazing offers that BetOnline has for you for the 21 and 22 sports years. BetOnline, the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, final segment, crossover. Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. Evan Sidery, Locked On Colts. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals and or Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Free and available on all platforms. No paywall here. You might have to listen to some ad reads, but it's a lot better than having to pay for stuff. So the Colts terrify me and Bo. Bo has been talking about this game for the last 2 months, about, a team you don't really want to play, especially because they've gotten better and better, it seems, every week. Jonathan Taylor's a vision. The offensive line has been stout. Darius Leonard's Darius Leonard, and Carson Wentz isn't making mistakes. I mean, except for one thing. I mean, can we bring some levity here? It's almost impossible to throw an interception inside the 1-yard line from both sides in one season. And Carson Wentz has done that, losing 2 games for this team where they should have been 10-4 instead of 8-6. But all in all, Carson Wentz has played pretty well, especially coming off the cavalcade of injuries he's had over the last 5 years. I'm going to start with him really quickly. The condition of the trade was if he played 75% of snaps, I believe that would warrant a first-round pick for Philly. Are you okay with giving up a first-round pick with how Carson Wentz has played this year?
Yes, I would say yes. Recently with his play, it makes you hesitant. But, I mean, with the way I talked about earlier in the show, but the way that he allows Frank Reich to open back up his playbook, which you haven't seen in about 3 years since Andrew Luck, I think it's worth it. You have a mobile strong arm quarterback who can do rollouts, do all of Frank Reich's favorite plays. He hasn't been doing the last couple of years because of Phillip Rivers. He's statue in the pocket. Jacoby Brissett, he didn't trust the back quarterback right after Andrew Luck retired. Carson Wentz is going to be 29 years old, I believe, next week. So he's still a couple of years down the road. He's still in his prime years, so to say. He's definitely not an elite quarterback. He's probably more so like a top 12, a top 14 quarterback when he's at his peak right now. And that's a fair thing. This Colts team doesn't need a top 10, top 5 quarterback to make a deep run in the playoffs. Sure, it probably caps their ceiling for where they could be down the road. But if Carson Wentz can play the way he has for most of the season, I think he has 23 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. You would take that every single time if you're a Colts fan. I mean, he led the league in interceptions last year in only 13 games. So he's definitely cut down on his turnovers. He's playing a lot more smarter football. He's a really strong game manager. That could be a slap in the face for a guy. Carson is a really good game manager. He's doing exactly what Greg wants him to do. It's the Jonathan Taylor show, but just your Tampa Bay and Baltimore in 2 big games, for example, where the defense kind of collapsed in those games and kind of led to those losses. He's had shown in those games that if you take the run away completely for 300 plus yards on you, if you allow him to. Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver out of USC, he's really blossomed in his second for 1,000 plus yards. He's his favorite target. Always 100 plus targets this season. Carson Wentz, I think you've seen so far this year, opening up the playbook, his potential down the road as well. Year two better in the system with a lot more adjustment time. I do think a first, especially when you see the other quarterback trades in recent history, it's multiple first-round picks and a couple other picks on top of that as well. We saw what the Rams had to do to get Matthew Stafford. I think Carson Wentz, for what this team paid for, is worth the price.
Yeah, and Michael Pittman versus Jr. versus Byron Murphy Jr. That's going to be a great matchup come Saturday. I can't wait to kind of see that one play out. Should be some good one-on-one matchups between the two of those guys. It is, and then you look at Carson Wentz, the last 4 games. If you remove the Houston Texans game, because everybody should beat up on the Texans, but they've played 3 playoff caliber teams. They lost to Tampa Bay, where Tampa Bay seemed to be like, okay, Carson, you beat us, and they ended up winning that game down the stretch. He had a solid first half, but Buffalo and New England, 2 AFC's powers, he completes 16 passes combined, and the Colts win those games kind of running away. It's pretty crazy. Is there too much trust still, or do you think Frank Reich is coming down to earth as far as what he can trust his quarterback that they have? I mean, I've been watching the Hard Knocks. I mean, they have this connection, obviously, this relationship. It's almost like father-son. Does he have a realistic idea of who Carson Wentz can be and who he needs to be for them to be successful?
Yeah, Bo, you stole the words right out of my mouth there. I think he trusts his quote unquote son because this guy is obsessed with Carson Wentz. Like he will go to bat for Carson Wentz every single time. He's the one that forced Chris Ballard to make this trade. He's like, hey, Ballard was hesitant to make the trade. Like, this is a lot of picks to go for a guy like Carson Wentz. And Frank's like, hey, I'll get him back to normal. Let's go ahead and make this trade happen. He's done that so far this year. He's playing at a competent level, which is all this Colts team needs. But to be quite honest, I mean, in those 2 games you mentioned, Buffalo and New England, those 2 teams couldn't stop Jonathan Taylor, so why throw the ball? Like, Jonathan Taylor was just going absolutely nuclear in those games, averaging 6+ yards per touch in those situations. If that happens again on Saturday, you're probably going to see Carson Wentz maybe complete 2 or 3 passes, and that's just going to be one of those days where Jonathan Taylor is going off once again. So I will give Carson Wentz a little credit on that. I mean, in the games that he is forced to throw, he's making good decisions, but I think the Colts have realized the last 2+ months of the season, we have a generational running back behind Carson Wentz. Why not give him 29 touches, what he's averaging the last 6 weeks of the season? This guy's putting up Derrick Henry-esque numbers and doing better than Derrick Henry did the last couple. So he's really on pace to be the new RB1 in the NFL. And I think Carson Wentz is fine with that. I mean, he's winning games. He's not really turning the ball over a lot, handing off the ball to Jonathan Taylor, so it helps out his stats a little bit. But Carson Wentz is doing his job, and Jonathan Taylor, this whole offense runs through him. And I think they're going to carry that all the way to a deep playoff run if it continues.
Evan Sidery, Locked on Colts. Alex Clancy and Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. I mean, here's the thing. It seems like the Colts are walking on a high wire without a safety net. Like if a team, I mean, at this point, it seems that all it takes is one team to figure out how to stop Jonathan Taylor, and this offense may implode. And it's easy for me to say because it hasn't happened yet. Well, it's only a matter of time. And obviously, I hold a lot of credence in a team that can play in any weather can win Super Bowls. We saw it with Tampa. We saw it with Tennessee, going into New England in cold weather and winning an ugly game there with Derrick Henry. Do they have the ability to trust Carson Wentz in any capacity if Jonathan Taylor, heaven forbid, gets injured, because you never want to see anybody get injured. I don't know if you can trust Naheem Hines or Marlon Mack to carry even 50% of the weight that Jonathan Taylor has. Is there any trust in Carson Wentz outside of a couple sprinkled in play action passes that are set up by Jonathan Taylor being so dominant?
Yeah, it's a really valid point, honestly, because if, knock on wood, anything happens to Jonathan Taylor, this offense is toast. They're going to go down from being an elite 1 to bottom tier in the NFL. I mean, Carson Wentz can make a couple splash plays happen per game going deep down the field, but he still has some of those issues that we saw in Philadelphia. When he gets pressure in his face, he kind of goes through reads too fast. He kind of presses when the lights are brightest. We saw it in prime time against New England. He really seemed like he just wasn't in it to win it on Saturday against the Patriots. But I think they could still win a playoff game if a situation like that happened. I think Carson Wentz could go out and win a game. I've been thinking to myself, why can't Carson Wentz be Joe Flacco that we saw the Ravens do? They had Ray Rice at running back. They ran at that ball. They had an opportunistic defense. If Carson Wentz can just play well for 3 or 4 games, that's a lot to ask for Carson Wentz, but just 3 or 4 games, and he can do that. The Colts are legitimately a Super Bowl contender, but that's probably what's going to happen in playoff football. They're going to take away Jonathan Taylor very well, and Carson Wentz got to win multiple games. But I think to myself, if Joe Flacco can do it, why can't Carson Wentz? He's number 2 overall pick in the draft in 2016. He has the talent. He has the full trust of Frank Reich. His confidence level, by the way, is on an entirely new level in Indy compared to Philadelphia. He's a completely different guy than what we've seen in the past with the Eagles. So I think Carson Wentz could do that, but realistically, if Jonathan Taylor, if a team figures that out and it's on film for everyone else around the NFL, they're certainly in trouble. They're going to be a lot different than they have been the last couple months.
Last question about this defense. What do you think the game plan is to slow down Kyler Murray, keep them at bay, where it seems like the Rams and Raheem Morris set forth the blueprint to slow down the Cardinals offense the last couple of weeks, and the Lions piggyback that? You expect the same thing from the Indianapolis Colts on Saturday?
Honestly, I think this Colts defense matches up very well with Kyler to the point that I don't think they're going to change much at all in their scheme. I mean, they play a heavy zone defense. DeAndre Hopkins being out is huge. Rondale Moore is questionable, so this could be a wounded wide receiver group as well. So you really have to outside Christian Kirk, really care about much anyone else on the outside. So this could be a situation where I think they just play the regular zone heavy defense. You have DeForest Buckner in the middle, you guys all know about from San Francisco. He's going to be a wrecking ball in the middle. And then Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke can just spy on Kyler Murray. They're 2 of the fastest, lankiest linebackers in the NFL. So have each guy spy on each side of the other side of the line of scrimmage, and I think they're fine. I think Kyler Murray's going to play a very pocket-centric game. He might break a couple runs down the field, but outside of that, I think it's got to be Kyler Murray winning with his arm and the wide receivers getting separation against his really improved Colts secondary. They have 2 young cornerbacks in Rock Ya-Sin and Isaiah Rodgers who really blossomed over the last 2 months of the season. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. If DeAndre Hopkins is playing, I would say this could be a tougher matchup, but him being out against this defense, and especially with the speed of this defense, I think it's a nightmare defensive scenario for this Cardinals offense to go up against.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't just throw a little salt in the Steve Keim wound here. The drafting by the Indianapolis Colts has been revolutionary for their future. And what the Arizona Cardinals haven't had is any of that outside of, Kyler Murray. The first and second round pick hits by the Colts have been absolutely mind-blowing. Let's just even go from 2018, because Malik Hooker, you thought Malik Hooker was going to be an absolute world beater coming out of Michigan, I believe, from the safety position. Maybe take a little high, but it didn't matter because he was supposed to be a transformational talent. You look
Was
from
he Ohio State?
2018 on.
Yeah, OSU.
Was he him in I get him in Jabril Peppers missed, or what did I say? It doesn't matter. So 2018, Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, 1-2. 2020, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, Julian Blackmon, 1-2-3, and then Kwity Paye this year. Like, that's what happens when you inexpensive employees to play exemplary roles. You're able to build rosters around it. Even going back to Ryan Kelly from the center position late in the first round, trading for DeForest Buckner, giving up the 13th overall pick. Like, that's how you run an organization from a draft perspective. And we're going to get to see it on full display, where them all wearing Indianapolis Colts jerseys Christmas night. Evan Sidery, dude, this has been so much fun. Hopefully they get to play in the next year or so we get to do this again. Maybe we'll meet in the Super Bowl. Who knows? Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. Evan Sidery, Locked on Colts. Follow him at East Sidery for his other portion of his life covering basketball. And then at Locked on Colts, the best Colts information you can get out there. Thank you for making Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Colts your first listen every day. be sure to make Locked On Bets your second listen. These guys are the man, both of them. Your boy Q, expert analysis, Lee Sterling. It's what they do, free and available on all platforms. Thanks for listening. We'll check you all on our respective podcasts tomorrow.